The first thing Everett Harlow noticed when he woke up was the blinding overhead light, cold and sterile, and the overwhelming smell of antiseptic. His entire left arm throbbed with a deep, stabbing pain that made his vision swim. He shifted slightly on the metal table and groaned. A greenish figure loomed into view, its smooth, glistening skin catching the light. It wore a white coat that barely fit over its broad shoulders. Its 4 eyes blinked asynchronously as it tapped on a translucent tablet. "You are experiencing severe nociceptive stimulus," it said, voice clipped and mechanical. "Vital signs unstable, prognosis terminal." Everett squinted at the creature. "Terminal? Are you nuts? I just broke my arm, didn't I?" The alien Tigroon, according to the badge pinned crookedly to its coat, tilted its head. Fracture severity coupled with unchecked pain response indicates systemic failure is imminent. Everett tried to sit up, but the wave of pain nearly knocked him out cold. He gritted his teeth and forced his breathing to slow. Pain means the nerve's still alive, right? If it hurt like hell, that's good news. Begram froze. The tablet slipped from its long fingers and clattered onto the floor. From the corner of the room, another alien, smaller and more violet-toned, gasped audibly. A few more white-coated figures poked their heads through the doorway, whispering to each other in frantic chirps. You equate searing pain with biological viability?" Tagrin asked, voice uncertain. Everett grimaced and shifted again, cradling his left arm against his chest. "Yeah, if I couldn't feel anything, then I'd be worried." The room buzzed with confusion. Tagrin picked up the tablet and tapped furiously. "Correction of prognosis required. Subject Everett Harlow is not terminal. Subject is resilient." "Glad we cleared that up," Everett muttered, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. A taller alien in a deep blue coat entered the room. Its nameplate read, "Instructor Vethin." It stared at Everett with a mixture of concern and fascination. "Mr. Harlow," Vethin said, "you must remain still. We must assess damage accurately." "Fine," Everett said, lying back against the cold table. "Just warn me before you poke at anything." Tagrin nodded eagerly. "Warning. Palpation commencing." The fingers were cold and a little too firm. When they pressed along his arm, Everett grunted sharply. "Palpation at distal radius elicits severe pain," Tagrin reported. "Sounds like a fracture," Everett said through clenched teeth. "You got an X-ray machine or something?" Vethin and Tagrin exchanged a look. "We have molecular resonance imaging," Vethin said. "Good enough," Everett sighed. "Just do it." They wheeled an odd-looking device over him. It hummed and clicked as it scanned his arm. A moment later, a 3D holographic image popped up above the tablet, showing a clear break through the radius bone, just above the wrist. Vethin tapped the projection. Complete transverse fracture, no displacement. Everett squinted at the image. "So it's a clean break. No bone sticking out where it shouldn't be." "Affirmative," Vethin said. "Then you need to immobilize it," Everett said. "Splint it first, then cast it. Maybe a realignment if necessary." The Groon blinked. "Realignment?" "You know, setting the bone straight. If it's crooked, you gotta move it back before putting it in a cast." The students recoiled slightly. "You advocate for intentional infliction of further pain?" Tagrin whispered. Everett laughed weakly. "Only because it heals better that way. Trust me, you don't want the bone healing wrong." The aliens huddled together, muttering. Everett caught words like barbaric and incomprehensible floating through the air. Instructor Vethin eventually stepped forward again. "We will proceed according to your advice, Mr. Harlow. However, sedation will be administered." "Good plan," Everett said, relieved. "I don't want to be awake when you yank on my arm." Tagrin produced a small injector and pressed it against Everett's neck. A cool sensation washed over him, and the pain dulled immediately. His eyelids grew heavy. As he floated into unconsciousness, he heard Tagrin whisper to Vethin, "They endure agony willingly." Everett woke up in a different room. His arm was encased in a lightweight, semi-transparent cast that pulsed faintly with a soft blue light. Tiny nanofibers crisscrossed the surface. "We should have levels immobilize and complete," Tagrin said, standing at his side. "Pain levels?" "Sore," Everett said, shifting slightly. "But tolerable. Recovery estimated at 6 terrestrial weeks," Tagrin reported. "Sounds about right," Everett said. A few feet away, another alien student, a small yellow one named Kethar, clutched a tablet to its chest. "Mr. Harlow," Kethar said tentatively, "may we study you further?" Everett raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, study?" "Controlled stress tests," Kethar said quickly. "Observation of healing process. Analysis of pain responses over time." Everett groaned. "Stress tests? You mean poking at me and seeing how much it hurts?" "Exactly," Kethar said, looking thrilled. "Fantastic," Everett muttered. "Just what I needed." Despite his protests, Everett agreed. He figured that if he was stuck in this place anyway, he might as well be useful. Besides, the alien's genuine curiosity was hard to resist. Over the next few days, a parade of medical students rotated through his room. Some tested his grip strength, others measured swelling and inflammation. One overly enthusiastic student accidentally jostled his arm too hard, sending a jolt of pain up to his shoulder. Everett grimaced. "Careful, it's still healing." The student recoiled, looking horrified. You survived this?" "Yeah," Everett said. "I've had worse. Broke my ankle once falling off a roof." There was a collective intake of breath. "You fell from elevation and survived?" Tagrin asked, scribbling furiously on his tablet. Everett chuckled. "Humans are tougher than we look." Vethin entered the room again one morning, holding a large data pad. "Mr. Harlow, we have compiled preliminary observations." "Hit me," Everett said, shifting to sit up straighter. "Humans demonstrate extreme nociceptive tolerance," Vethin said. "You interpret acute pain as a positive sign of recovery rather than a death signal." "Yeah," Everett said. "Pain's not the enemy. It's the warning system." Tagrin nodded solemnly. "Pain as an ally. A radical concept." Everett shrugged and winced when the movement tugged on his healing arm. "Radical or not, it keeps us alive." Later that afternoon, they brought in a simulation rig. Strange-looking, like a dentist's chair fused with an MRI scanner. Tagrin explained that it would simulate moderate stress on his arm without risking real damage. Everett eyed the rig suspiciously. "If this thing snaps my bone again, I'm suing." "Suing," Tagrin repeated, confused. "Legal action?" "Figure of speech," Everett said. "Let's just get it over with." They strapped his arm into the rig carefully. A few minutes later, a gentle pressure began to push against his wrist. It hurt, but not terribly. "Pressure tolerance adequate," Tagrin said. "Subject remains conscious." Everett gritted his teeth. "Yeah, I'm conscious. And annoyed." "Emotional irritation recorded," Kethar said, scribbling. The rig completed its cycle without incident. Everett's arm throbbed afterward, but the cast's internal mechanisms adjusted, soothing the worst of it. By the end of the week, Everett had gained a certain reputation among the students. They treated him with a mixture of awe and cautious reverence, as though he were some mythical creature that refused to die. One evening, as Everett sat quietly reading a battered paperback novel one of the humans on board had smuggled in, Tagrin approached with a strange look on his face. "Mr. Harlow," he said, "your willingness to endure pain for survival has inspired a curriculum revision." Everett looked up. "Yeah? What's changing?" "We will now teach that pain is not solely indicative of imminent death," Tagrin said. "In some cases, it signifies resilience." Everett smiled faintly. "Glad I could help." As Tagrin left, Everett leaned back carefully, cradling his arm. He still had weeks of recovery ahead, but somehow, knowing he had shifted an entire alien civilization's view of pain made the ache just a little more bearable. Everett sat in the communal recovery bay, leaning carefully against a padded bench as he tried to flex the fingers of his left hand. Stiffness fought back with every attempt, tendons pulling tight like old rubber bands. His cast, still faintly glowing, adjusted minutely with each movement, tiny servos humming quietly. Across from him, Tagroon and Kithar hovered over a portable console, whispering in rapid clicks and whirs. A few other students loitered nearby, tablets clutched tightly, eyes darting between Everett and the readouts. Without looking up, Everett muttered, "You know, you could just ask what you want, instead of standing there like you're waiting for me to explode." Tagroon straightened, looking almost guilty. "We hesitate to impose further demands. Your biological resilience is already taxed." Everett flexed his hand again, grimacing. "If you want to know something, spit it out. Sitting here doing finger exercises is boring as hell." Kithar edged closer, tablet quivering slightly. "We wish to understand your healing process more intimately, specifically the phenomenon of callus formation." Everett blinked. "You mean the bone callus? The lump that forms when the bones knitting back together?" Kithar bobbed its head. "Affirmative. It appears counterintuitive. A mass of irregular tissue stabilizing a critical structure?" Everett chuckled softly. "It's messy but effective. First you get a soft callus, kind of rubbery. Then it hardens up. Bone remodels over time, smooths itself out." Tagroon stared at his own hands for a moment, flexing his long fingers as if imagining the process. Self-generated scaffolding. Astonishing. "You haven't seen anything yet," Everett said, setting the casted arm down in his lap. "Human bones can even reabsorb extra material if it overgrows. Our bodies are like construction crews that work overtime without asking." The students scribbled furiously on their tablets, antennae twitching with excitement. Kithar hesitated, tapping the corner of its tablet. "Would you permit us to observe the development stages? Non-invasive imaging only." "As long as you don't fry my arm in the process," Everett said, shifting to a more comfortable position. "And maybe bring a chair next time. My back's killing me." Within minutes, they wheeled over a high-resolution scanner. The machine was compact, shaped like a thick belt that they wrapped gently around Everett's forearm. A soft whirring began, and within seconds a detailed internal image floated above the console. Tagroon pointed to a cloudy halo around the fracture site. "Preliminary callus detected." Everett leaned forward with interest. "Looks good. Means it's healing." Kithar tapped a few settings, causing the image to split into layers, showing blood vessel growth around the callus. Tagroon's voice dropped to a reverent whisper. "Induced angiogenesis without external intervention?" Everett grinned. "Bodies know what to do if you let them." One of the other students, a pale blue-skinned alien named Vren, approached, holding up a strange-looking brace. It looked like a hybrid of exoskeleton and compression sleeve. "Proposal," Vren said. "Supplementary support device to enhance structural stability during movement exercises." Everett eyed the thing suspiciously. "You want to strap me into a robo-sleeve?" "Correct," Vren said. "Calibrated to match tensile strength and elasticity of healing tissue." Everett considered it. "All right, as long as it doesn't crush my arm if I sneeze." They fitted the device over his cast. It adjusted automatically, tiny motors whirring softly. Immediately, Everett felt a supportive pressure around the injury, firm but not uncomfortable. "Movement is permitted within safe parameters," Vren said, stepping back. Everett wiggled his fingers again, this time with more ease. "Not bad. Feels like someone's giving my arm a gentle hug." Kithar tilted its head. "Is tactile reassurance beneficial to recovery?" "Yeah," Everett said, flexing his wrist carefully. "Comfort can speed up healing. Less stress means better blood flow, better tissue repair." Tagroon scribbled frantically, nearly dropping the tablet. A chime echoed through the bay. Vathan entered, carrying a small tray with various vials and a handheld injector. "Supplemental nutrient infusion," Vathan announced, designed to accelerate osteoblastic activity. Everett raised an eyebrow. You're giving me bone-building juice? Colloquially, yes, Vethin said. Everett extended his uninjured arm. Fire away. The injector hissed softly against his skin. A warm sensation spread up his arm, leaving a faint metallic taste in his mouth. Side effects minimal, Vethin assured him. Mild fatigue at most. Good, Everett muttered, leaning back again. I'm already tired of sitting around. Hours passed, marked by the gradual dimming of the overhead lights. As evening settled in, the students shifted focus from intense observation to more casual discussion. Everett welcomed the change. Being stared at like a zoo exhibit all day was starting to wear thin. Tagrun sat cross-legged on the floor, fiddling with his stylus. Mr. Harlow, are bone fractures considered common injuries among your species? Pretty common, Everett said, stretching his legs out. Especially for kids. Falling out of trees, wiping out on bikes, that sort of thing. Kethar looked horrified. You permit your offspring to engage in activities with high injury risk? Everett laughed. Sure, builds character. The aliens exchanged glances, clearly uncertain whether he was joking. Ren tapped its stylus thoughtfully. Your species prioritizes experiential learning over injury prevention? Pretty much, Everett said. You can't wrap everyone in bubble wrap forever. Grun considered this. Adaptive risk tolerance. Fascinating. Everett yawned, jaw cracking loudly. Fascinating or not, this adapted creature needs some sleep. As he shifted to lie back more fully, Kethar scrambled to adjust the scanner belt, ensuring it wouldn't dig into his arm. We will monitor healing progression during your rest cycle, Kethar said. Knock yourselves out, Everett mumbled, already half asleep. The next morning, Everett woke to a low hum and the faint smell of sterilized metal. His arm felt better, still sore, but less stiff. Tagrun hovered nearby, reviewing overnight scans. Substantial progress, Tagrun said without preamble. Callus density increased by 17%. Good news, Everett said, blinking the sleep from his eyes. Means I'll be out of this thing sooner. The Kethar approached with a tray of breakfast items. The food was a bizarre mix of colors and textures, but Everett had learned not to ask too many questions. He picked up something green and squishy, sniffed it, and took a cautious bite. It tasted vaguely like cucumber mixed with marshmallow. Tagrun watched him intently. Nutritional adequacy? It's edible, Everett said around a mouthful. Could do with some bacon, though. Bacon? Vethin asked from across the room. Everett grinned. Crispy fried strips of pig. A collective shudder passed through the room. You consume the flesh of terrestrial mammals? Kethar asked, voice trembling. Not just pigs, Everett said cheerfully. Cows, chickens, sometimes deer. Tagrun made a strangled sound, scribbling furiously. Vethin cleared his throat. We will refrain from dietary supplementation beyond current parameters. Suit yourselves, Everett said, popping another piece of green mush into his mouth. Later that afternoon, they initiated a controlled mobility test. Vran carefully disengaged the external brace, leaving only the cast in place. Everett was instructed to perform simple tasks, gripping a ball, rotating his wrist, flexing his elbow. Each movement was measured and recorded, angles and force output displayed on a hovering screen. 300 grip strength at 42% of baseline, Vethin announced. Not bad for a guy who's been benched for a week, Everett said, squeezing the ball again. They moved on to dexterity exercises, handing him small objects to manipulate, a thin rod, a flexible disc, a set of tiny, weighted cubes. Kethar watched with wide eyes. Fine motor control returning rapidly. Muscle memory, Everett said. Body remembers what to do, even if it's a little busted up. Tagrun adjusted the scanner, capturing micro movements in real time. Afterward, they allowed him to rest. But Everett could feel the buzz of excitement in the room. His progress was faster than they had anticipated, and the implications for their understanding of biological recovery were enormous. As evening approached, again, Everett sat quietly, watching the alien students review the day's data. Despite the lingering ache in his arm, he felt oddly content. "Hey, Dogroom," he called out. The alien looked up. "I'm fully healed. You think you guys could rig up a simulator or something? I gotta get back in shape." Dagroon's eyes lit up. "Physical conditioning post-recovery? Affirmative. We will design a regimen." Everett grinned. "Better make it tough. Wouldn't want to disappoint my fans." The students laughed, an awkward chirping sound, but genuine. As the room settled into a quiet hum of activity, Everett leaned back against the bench, arm cradled carefully, and closed his eyes. If nothing else, he thought, at least he was teaching them something useful. Humans weren't fragile, delicate creatures. They were stubborn, reckless, and, most of all, built to heal. 2 days later, Everett sat cross-legged on the padded floor of the rehabilitation wing, his left arm now free of the external brace but still encased in the semi-transparent cast. A low-frequency hum vibrated through the walls as the sterile lighting dimmed slightly for the late afternoon cycle. Tigrin crouched nearby, holding a dull gray sphere about the size of a grapefruit. "You stated yesterday that limited stress promotes tissue remodeling," Tagrun said. "We have prepared a graded resistance module for manual dexterity training." Everett shifted, stretching his back. "All right, what's the catch?" "No catch," Tagrun said, offering the sphere. "Grip strength requirements calibrated to 6% above your current capability." Everett took the sphere carefully, feeling its oddly textured surface. It gave way with a firm resistance as he squeezed, pushing back against his fingers. "Feels like one of those stress balls," Everett said. Ilachi, perched on a low stool beside Tagrun, blinked rapidly. "Stress induction objects are therapeutic?" "Yeah," Everett said, working the ball slowly. "Helps strengthen muscles and sometimes just calms you down." Guitar made a sharp notation on the tablet. "Emotional stabilization through repetitive mechanical action. Unexpected." After a few minutes, Everett handed the sphere back. His forearm ached pleasantly, the kind of dull soreness that meant he was making progress. Vethin entered with a portable imaging unit, its scanning surface gleaming under the lights. "Structural integrity assessment," Vethin said, setting the device beside Everett. "Go ahead," Everett said, extending his arm into the machine's opening. A soft buzz filled the air as the scanner built a new image, layer by layer. After a few moments, Vethin projected the image onto the wall. The fracture line was barely visible now, blurred by thickening bone tissue knitting across the gap. "Substantial mineral deposition," Vethin said, tapping a point near the original break. "Osteogenic activity remains elevated." "Looks solid," Everett said, studying the image. "Another week or two and I could probably lose the cast." Thagrin tilted his head. "Would your species authorize premature removal to accelerate functional recovery?" "Tempting," Everett said. "But dumb. Bone's gotta be strong enough first, otherwise you just snap it again." Githar leaned forward. "Self-regulation despite physical impatience. Fascinating." "Survival instinct," Everett said, shrugging carefully. "Shortcuts usually end badly." Bathan adjusted the imaging display to show time-lapse progression from initial fracture to current state. Watching it, Everett felt a strange sense of pride. His body had been quietly rebuilding itself without any fancy interventions, just rest, nutrition, and time. The scanner beeped softly, signaling completion. Vethin powered it down, folding the imaging plate neatly. "You will now engage in progressive load-bearing tasks," Vethin said. "Incremental increases to determine safe thresholds." "Sounds like a gym day," Everett said, pushing himself upright. Bren entered, carrying a series of weighted objects, each shaped differently, a rod, a cube, and a flat disc. "You will lift and manipulate these sequentially," Vren explained. "Load progression, 1 kilogram to 5 kilograms. Start light," Everett said, flexing his fingers. Warm-up's important. He picked up the rod first. It was smooth and cool, weighing about as much as a heavy book. He curled it slowly, feeling the muscles in his forearm tighten. No pain, he said after a few reps, just some pulling. Acceptable, Vethin said. Proceed to next weight. The cube was heavier, closer to a gallon of water. Everett gripped it with both hands, careful to keep his wrist aligned. After a few lifts, he set it down, breathing steadily. Still good, he said. Arms tired, but not hurting. Kithar scribbled rapidly, antennae quivering with excitement. The disc was last. Wide but thin, it distributed its weight awkwardly. Everett had to adjust his grip a few times to balance it properly. Grip strength still lagging, he said as he set it down. Not surprising. Tagger nodded. Muscle atrophy secondary to immobilization. Right, Everett said. Use it or lose it. They gave him a break after that, bringing over a hydration pack filled with a slightly sweet, citrus-flavored liquid. Everett drank gratefully, feeling the coolness settle into his stomach. While he rested, Kithar pulled up a new holographic model. We have designed a functional simulation for fine motor rehabilitation, Kithar said. A mechanical assembly task. The model showed a series of small rods, gears, and plates that needed to be assembled into a simple machine. Fine motor and cognitive engagement, Vethin said. Simultaneous recovery stimulation. Everett grinned. You built me a space-age Lego set. Clarification, not Legos, Kithar said quickly. Close enough, Everett said, setting the hydration pack aside. They brought over a kit containing the real pieces. The parts were lightweight, but required careful manipulation, sliding dowels into sockets, securing tiny screws, aligning gears. At first, Everett fumbled. His left hand lacked its former dexterity and his fingers cramped after only a few minutes. He paused, shaking out his hand. Frustration levels acceptable? Tigrun asked, peering at him. Yeah, Everett said, picking up another piece. Struggle's part of the process. Bit by bit, the machine took shape. A simple crankshaft mechanism, gears turning smoothly when he spun the handle. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. He set it down with a satisfied grunt. Motor control improved by 12% during task, Vethin announced. Feels like more, Everett said, flexing his fingers. But I'll take it. Hours later, as the lighting dimmed into evening cycle, Tagran and Vethin gathered the devices and reviewed the day's data. Kithar lingered, watching Everett rub his forearm thoughtfully. You perceive healing as a partnership between conscious effort and involuntary biological processes, Kithar said. Exactly, Everett said. Body does most of the work, but attitude matters too. Kithar tilted his head. Attitude alters physiology? Not directly, Everett said, but staying positive keeps you moving forward instead of giving up. Kithar considered this, antennae curling inward. We must incorporate psychological resilience factors into recovery models. You should, Everett said. Healing's not just about fixing tissue. It's about not letting the injury beat you. Silence settled between them for a moment, comfortable and reflective. After a while, Vetin approached with an authorization pad. Final evaluation, scheduled for 72 hours hence, Vethin said. Pending successful completion of mobility metrics, cast removal will be authorized. Everett tapped the pad with his good hand, confirming his participation. Sounds like a plan, he said, rising carefully to his feet. As he made his way back to his quarters, arm cradled loosely against his chest, he couldn't help but chuckle. Somewhere along the line, he'd become the blueprint for a new curriculum on human recovery, a walking, talking case study in stubbornness. 3 days later, after a final battery of tests and imaging, Tagran and Vethin gathered around him in the sterile procedure room. The cast had already begun loosening itself in preparation for removal, the embedded nanofibers retracting. You may experience transient discomfort during extraction, Tagran warned. Nothing new, Everett said, bracing himself. The cast split open with a soft hiss, peeling away like the skin of a ripe fruit. Fresh air touched his forearm, and he flexed it experimentally. The skin was paler under the line where the cast had been, muscles thinner, but the bone held firm. "No sharp pain," he said, rotating his wrist. "Feels stable." Bétain scanned the arm one last time, confirming structural integrity. "You are cleared for progressive return to full activity," Bétain said. Kithar handed him a compression sleeve to wear for additional support. Everett slid it on, feeling its snug, reassuring pressure. "Thanks," he said, "for everything. And you have expanded our understanding of resilience far beyond initial projections," Bétain said. "And you made sure I didn't turn into a lopsided jigsaw puzzle," Everett said with a grin. As he left the medical wing, stretching his newly freed arm toward the artificial sky panels above, Everett felt a deep, satisfying ache not from injury, but from healing. He had endured, adapted, and taught an entire group of alien scholars that survival wasn't about avoiding damage. It was about facing it, working through it, and coming out stronger on the other side.